Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Claire Betker, and I'm really pleased to welcome you here today to our fifth conversation in our second series of COVID and health equity conversations. And the title of our conversation today is The Way Forward, Moving from Risk to Resilience. And in this five-part conversation series, we've examined the relationship between COVID-19 and health equity to discuss key ingredients and approaches to implement and sustain change that prioritizes equity for all. And before we start, I'm going to invite Louis Sorin. He's the co-chair of the National Collaborating Center for Determinants of Health Advisory Committee to welcome us today and to open our conversation for us. So Louis, please.
Thank you, Claire. Good morning, bonjour, tanse. My spirit name in Cree is Red Buffalo Man, and I belong to the Wolf Clan. I want to welcome you all to this circle. I have the humble honor of opening this sacred circle of conversations and dialogue and action on a very important topic about how do we move forward. The first thing that I need to do in order to situate myself is acknowledge the territory that I'm on. And we should all do this on a regular basis as individuals to remind ourselves of the stance we take on the place we live and in the place we work and in the duties that we have to that territory and to the people who inhabit that territory. So I'd like to begin by saying that I acknowledge that I'm on Treaty 1 territory and that this is the land where we gather and it's traditional territory for the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Oji Cree, the Dakota, and the Dene people. And it's also the homeland of Métis people. And I ask myself every time I say this, do I really mean and what do I need to learn about the importance of this declaration, the importance of this acknowledgement of territory? And the reason is simple to me, and is that territory is part of a worldview. And when we acknowledge territory of the peoples who have shared this land in the past and continue to do so, we acknowledge that there are merits, there are vital merits of the languages and of the knowledges, of the contributions, and of our duty and responsibility that we have as settlers in that territory. To preserve it, to nurture all these things I've talked about, worldview and practices and languages and relationship to the land. We have a duty to do that because that's what privilege means, is that privilege gives us a sense of duty, not a sense of entitlement, but a sense of duty to through the work we do and how we live to leave this to the next generations, all of us. And so I encourage you this morning to pay attention to that and to look at the actions that you have a duty to engage in order to strengthen those relationships. And strengthening relationships means restoration, it means reclamation, it means reconciliation, and it means speaking to power and speaking to the truth in our work that we do and taking responsibility. So with that, I say thank you and look forward to moving forward in our conversations today.
Thank you, Louis, and you always have such a way of centering myself anyway, and I think all of us in this conversation. So thank you so much for your gifts and for your wisdom today, and we look forward to your words as part of our panel. Before we get going, I'd like to ask you to use that chat box. Thanks, Pema, for opening that conversation there. Pema Mazumdar is one of our knowledge translation specialists. So use the chat box to introduce yourself, where you're from, and situate yourself. So go ahead right now and start to use that chat box. French interpretation is available today by clicking on the globe. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, sort of scroll your cursor down there, you'll see a symbol that looks like a globe. And if you click on that globe icon and then select French, the French language, if you click it again, you can also mute the original audio and all you'll hear is the French interpreter. So I also am joining you today from Winnipeg, Manitoba, which, as Louis said, is in Treaty 1 territory. The National Collaborating Center for Determinants of Health is located in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, where it's hosted by St. FX University in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, beautiful Antigonish, Nova Scotia. So I welcome also everyone here from coast to coast, and also respectfully acknowledge that we all live and work on the traditional lands of the many Indigenous people. My name is Dr. Claire Betker. I'm the Scientific Director of the National Collaborating Center for Determinants of Health, and we're one of 6 National Collaborating Centers for Public Health across Canada, which are funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada, and were created in post-SARS, so close to 15 years ago. The topic of today's conversation is examining themes from reports and our conversations, previous conversations, looking for strategies and values which will carry us forward, as we said, the way forward, and looking for opportunities for future equity work. At the end of the conversation, within an hour, I'm going to ask you for one word that's top of your mind as participants in this conversation. So Danielle, if you could put that slide up from our last conversation about 2 weeks ago. And you can see some of those words that were top of people's minds: hopeful, passion, proud, truth, hope, wow. You can see a couple of wows there, and resilience. And I just wanted to point out that this is the 5th of this series of conversations, and our first, we actually were very pleased to be able to host Dr. Teresa Tam. She sent a video, and Dr. Stephen Hoffman from CIHR, Dr. Teresa Tam being our Chief Public Health Officer. So we've used this conversation, this series of conversations, to really profile the report that she tabled in October of 2020 and really pointed to an equity approach as being something very intentional and explicit on the way forward. And we know all over the world that some groups or populations struggle to make ends meet with little daily income, poorer housing conditions and education, fewer employment opportunities, they experience greater gender inequality, and have little or no access to safe environments, clean water, air, food security, and health services. And we know that that leads to unnecessary suffering, avoidable illness, and premature death. And it also harms our society as a whole and our economies. What's interesting to me today is today is World Health Day. And the World Health Organization's theme for World Health Day is building a fairer, healthier world. And they acknowledge, the World Health Organization, of course, that COVID-19, the pandemic, has shed a very, very harsh light on existing health inequities and has also increased those inequities. And they're advocating for 4 sets of action, which I think are very relevant to our conversation today. First, to work together with communities and beyond the health sector. Second, to collect reliable data so inequities can be assessed and actions informed. Third, to tackle in a real way, and we're hoping our conversation today can really get to that action, but to tackle the root causes of inequities, and they're suggesting a whole of government approach. And the 4th one I think is very interesting, and that is acting beyond our borders. So beyond our country, beyond our community, beyond our provinces and territories. So in this particular conversation, we've asked our speakers, and we're thrilled to have the 3 people with us today. We've invited them to share their work in response to health and health inequity within pandemic planning, our response that's going on right now, and as we look forward to recovery. So I've talked about the French interpretation, but a few other housekeeping items. Our conversation is being recorded today and will be shared with registrants via email. It'll also be posted on our website. It's a very, very busy time. Be on our website for future reference or for others who are unable to come today to be able to watch it. Please use the chat box, as I said, to introduce yourself, but also for conversation and connection with one another. I saw an old friend and colleague, Donald Cole, there. He messaged me individually. You can do that as well. Please use this opportunity to connect. And what we've observed in other conversations is there's often two conversations going on, one within the chat box and one on the screen. Please use the chat box to share resources that you'll have. You'll be seeing our team, the NCCDH team. We have Jamie Steef, we have Claire O'Gorman, we have Danielle McDonald online. And so they'll be sharing some of our resources and resources from our speakers in that chat box. So watch there and it'll be sent to you afterwards as well. We're looking really serious about connecting with organizations where there's some success stories or even challenges in terms of responding to COVID-19. So please put into that chat box that you'd like to be able to contribute to that on a maybe more deep level, and any suggestions that you might have about who we might reach out to lift some of the stories of success and response to COVID-19. Also use that chat box for your questions, and Claire O'Gorman's going to be watching that, and we will have a question from the audience as we move forward. We hope to answer as many questions as possible, but we will do our best to answer them afterwards as well. So as I said earlier, this is the second series of COVID conversations that we've hosted. And the first series included 5 conversations on the 5 Wednesdays in April of 2020. And the focus then was on what was needed to be considered in terms of taking an equity approach to planning and responding. And I don't think any of us imagined at all what kind of a situation we were all going to find ourselves in 1 year later. Here we are in April, 1 year later. Those conversations were recorded. They're all on our website as well. And some outstanding speakers. We had 13 speakers from a broad range of public health and community organization and thus perspectives. So today we'll start by hearing opening remarks from our 3 panelists, and then we'll move to a discussion guided by your questions that you're going to provide in the chat box. Just as a note, those of you who registered today, we have people who've joined us from across Canada, coast to coast to coast. And the largest representation, of course, is from Ontario, which is to be expected. But what we're really thrilled about is that about 40% of those who registered, and we're assuming are online today, are working in public health at some capacity at a local, a regional, or national level. And we have also a very diverse set of people here with experiences from nonprofit, academic institutions, and government roles. So that makes for, I think, a very, very good, good conversation.